at the Wee Donegal Mammy, we are joined by Ming Flanagan, who is standing again to be elected to MEP.
Yes, indeed.
For the Parliament.
Yeah.
In Europe, you have 10 years under your belt in the Parliament.
Yes.
So why do you want to go back to Europe?
Well, one of the main reasons, well, to be quite honest, initially I didn't really want to go back, not because I didn't want to do the job, but because, I'll be honest with you, I was missing my kids. I leave at 3 o'clock on a Monday morning, come back at 6 on a Friday evening, and from that perspective, I had a good rethink about it. But about 4 years ago, I was approached by people affected in Donegal and other counties with defective concrete in their house. Yes. They asked me, what could I do? I said, look, your hearts have been broken already. I don't want to promise too much. I'm not really sure what I can do, but I do have a suggestion that you go to the Petitions Committee. And the Petitions Committee is a committee in the European Parliament whereby if you're an EU citizen and you feel there's a regulation or a directive that's negatively impacting on you because it's not been properly implemented by the government, then you can go to that committee. And I'd previously done it under whistleblower legislation with another lady called Julie Grace. So I suggested the campaigners to each individually put in a petition. And it's actually worked out quite well. They came over to the Petitions Committee, a group of people. They gave their presentation. They were very, very impressed to the point that I came on then and suggested that how about the MEPs come and visit Donegal, sit down in the kitchens of the people who are affected, read the mould up their nose, see people sitting around the table looking very down and depressed about what was going on with them.
Yes.
And I thought if they met these people firsthand, it would really impact on them and they'd put together a strong report. So they did come, and you've often heard the phrase, people before politics. I've seen it on election posters. I had never seen it in action. And that's why I was a little bit worried. Who was the chair of this committee from the same group as Fine Gael, the EPP, a woman called Dolores Montserrat. But I have to say, I was really impressed with what she produced. She produced a report that called upon a government from our own group to basically call for a seismic shift in how this was being dealt with, to call for a public inquiry to find out exactly why this ever happened in the first place, to call for the proper implementation of the market surveillance regulation so that this can never happen again, so that they test these products before they go into people's houses, and also that they put together a proper scheme that's really 100%, that doesn't involve rebuilding on foundations that could have defective concrete in them. So anyway, there was a good report produced, and I thought to myself, how am I actually going to tell these people that I'm actually thinking twice about running again, because I feel I'd let them down if I didn't, and no one else would carry it forward. So what I'm running again for on that issue is that if the Irish government don't listen to that report, I intend to invite these people back over again to this committee to present again and to put pressure on the European Commission, if necessary, to go to the European Court of Justice. So that's one of the reasons why I've ran again. Another one is I have been doing a job on trying to take money away from people like Larry Goodman, and you might have heard in the past in the UK, the Queen was getting hundreds of thousands of euros of European money for common agricultural policy funds. What I wanted to do was make sure that smaller farmers in small towns all around Donegal and other counties in the country would get more money. And as a result of my amendment, those on the smallest payments are getting a 50% increase between now and 2027. But I want to bring this further and complete that job, which would mean they get equal amounts with people in the Golden Vale, which would be more money in the shops in Donegal. And look, I'm not a farmer. I don't know you're a farmer, but I do realise that without farmers in our area, there'd be less money in hairdressers' pockets, there'd be less money in mechanics' pockets, less money in shops, and as a result of that, less teachers and less people around. So what I want to see in the next 5 years is to finish the job on the whole defective concrete, to get justice for people here, put pressure on the government, and I want to finish the job when it comes to giving more money to small farmers and taking it away from ranchers. Worked on a whole lot of other issues too. I'm vice chair of the carers group over there. I took over from Marion Harkin, and we have developed the European Care Strategy. I'm also involved in a group that's trying to take away the sale and the production of cannabis away from criminals and put it into the legitimate taxed economy, so that these taxes can go into health, they can go into education, and if someone does run into problems using this substance, they can go and get help without fear of ending up with a criminal record, and they can move on with their lives. So a lot of different issues I want to get back there on.
Good. So let's talk about immigration.
Yes.
Do you think Ireland should sign up to the Migration Pact?
Well, I haven't voted for the Migration Pact, not because I don't think we have a problem with controlling the immigration in this country and it's not being done right, but because I think ultimately 2 or 3 years down the line it will go wrong, because the plan proposes to house people on border countries with the EU who have very, very unstable leaderships. And we have seen this in the past with Turkey. When the going got tough, Turkey and their leader threatened to actually let all of these people come into Europe, really, really difficult for them and really difficult for everyone else, all at the one time. And he held Europe over a barrel, and then he started demanding more money. So I think the problem, that won't deal with the issue. It won't help the people who are seeking asylum, and it won't help people here. But what I do suggest, and I continue to suggest, is there is something I can do in the next Parliament, and that is we rescind trade agreements with countries like Israel, where 30% of the weapons that are being used to bomb men, women and children in Gaza are actually coming from the EU. And we're now going to see a wave of people coming from Palestine, just the same as we have from other countries. People who don't want to leave their home, the same as my family didn't want to go to London, but they want to stay in their home, but they can't stay there because they're being bombed and all the infrastructure is being destroyed. So the number one thing I can realistically do as an MEP in the next Parliament to basically deal with the immigration crisis is make it more likely that people will be able to stay at home. But here at home, what I would suggest, but I don't have power over this, but I do have influence in saying this. I said this initially. When the Russian offensive against the poor people of Ukraine happened, I said yes, we should take in a lot of these people as refugees. But the ordinary people of Ireland shouldn't pay for it. People like me on a crazy money like 108,000, and I have called for it to be reduced in a series of votes in the European Parliament, but it hasn't. But people like me who are paid phenomenal money, we should be charged an extra 5% tax rate so that there's money to help these people, and that the ordinary people of Ireland who can barely afford to put a meal on the table, pay their mortgage, pay their car insurance, aren't made to pay for it. And that the rich people pay for this and we pay for the cost of it.
Now, you yourself, unrelated to your European campaign, you yourself stated that you were diagnosed with autism in February.
Yes.
Have you found, since you talked openly about that, have you found that you've that it's almost being used against you online, or have you received any abuse for it or anything like that?
Well, it would be used against me online, all right. But my sister learned a very important lesson when she came out canvassing with me in Meath. She said she was nearly afraid to come out looking at the comments on social media. But the comments on social media are not what the real people say when you go out and meet them. And what I have met with is very emotional people who've come up to me and said, "You've just made life easier for my son or my daughter." And I have to say, I'm kind of a bit taken aback, because have I? But they tell me straight that now they find that it is more acceptable to come out and tell people that you're autistic, and it makes the whole thing easier for them. But I have to say, I can't claim ultimately that I was the courageous one here. My now 19-year-old daughter was the courageous one, because she woke me up on this. I have to admit to you, 4 years ago, we thought she was the troublemaker in our family. And we thought, God, she's causing us a lot of problems. But as it turns out, she was just waking us up to, now, men obviously can get diagnosed with autism, and men do get diagnosed with it. But women have a more difficult problem, because society expects them to hide it more than anyone else, to get on with life, and women are meant to get on with things. But she woke me up to the fact that what she was doing they were autistic traits. And I kept saying to her, "Well, could I do it as well?" And she goes, "The reason you do it as well, Daddy, is because I think you're autistic." So she finally convinced me, and I hoped, and there's a prejudice on my part, and a prejudice that came from a fear of what my daughter would face, that I wanted it to be a physical issue with her, that maybe if she did a bit more exercise, maybe if she ate better, maybe she went out and got a bit more sun, maybe that would deal with it all. But it didn't. And when I finally faced up to it, and I have a fear from it because my mother was given forced shock therapy, and she had an awful life after it. My father-in-law was given forced shock therapy, and I was worried about the mental health system. But once I embraced it and went looking for help, now I did walk on a few landmines along the way. I did meet a few people who gave us bad advice, but eventually we hit on the right person. And once she got diagnosed, she convinced me I should get diagnosed, and since February, I've known. And the best way I can describe it for me, it's a bit like if you're trying to wonder how to get to someplace. It's all right knowing where it is, but for me, it's a bit like the sat nav. I now know my location. I know why I do the things I did. I know why I was the way I was in school. I'm not so hard on myself. I know why I find certain debates because of auditory processing problems difficult. I now know why. So I can use tactics and things that help me out there. But ultimately, it's down to my daughter. But I think overall, though, people have accepted it. But I have to say, though, that this idea that people are completely tolerant of it is not true. And I can tell you from experience within the school system, phrases used by teachers like duds to describe people who are autistic, phrases like the R word, RETARD, used on a constant basis to people who are autistic that I know. And I've also seen a situation where teachers are saying to parents, "Oh, you're being too difficult, work with us." I've seen that. So there's a lot more acceptance needed. And it was very good to have an Autism Awareness Month, and I think it was really, really important. But what also is important is acceptance. And there was an article written in the Daily Mail after I got my diagnosis suggesting that I was only doing it for attention. And you know what my initial reaction was? Oh no, I hope that isn't the case. I felt bad about it. I had imposter syndrome about it. But a lot of people have talked to me since and said that was an abhorrent article. And I met it again today on Highland Radio, where I mentioned the fact that I was being abused for online for admitting, or for basically telling people I was autistic. And one of the candidates said to me, "You're just diagnosed with being silly." So there is prejudice out there still, but you know what? We're winning this fight, and we're a long way away from where we were 20 years ago.
We are,
and
indeed.
Things are improving, but a lot more needs to improve.
Very good. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Not at all, a
Ming
pleasure.
Flanagan. And I hope to speak again in the future, and I wish you well.
Okay.